everyone, Kate here for the second installment in my favorite chapters in Victorian literature. This will be filled with spoilers, but also have timestamps, so you can hop around to the books that you have read and enjoy those, and come back to hear me talk about chapters from the books that you haven't yet read. And let's just get into the books. The next chapter that I want to speak about is, I don't know if it's so much a chapter or as an incident, but in Diary of a Nobody, I have this recollection of there is a section where he's trying to hang a picture. And it's supposed to be this very simple procedure, right? You just find where you want the nail, you hang the picture, and it's just the way in which the Grossmiths wrote about it that makes it so amusing. And it's something that's very mundane, but with a skilled writer, they can make it very, very hilarious. And like I said, I wish I had the passage to read to you, because I'm sure it isn't all that lengthy because they're all diary entry lengths. And it's just very cleverly done. And I am in awe of the skill in the writing in that passage. So definitely take a look through Diary of a Nobody if you were thinking about reading it. It's a comical novel, very fun, lighthearted reading. And yeah, just it has many, many funny parts. Another one being where somehow through a set of circumstances, he accidentally dyes himself purple in the bathtub. And that was always very memorable to me. The next chapter is when Pip gets to go home with Mr. Wemmick and meet his father, who Mr. Wemmick affectionately refers to as the Aged. And Mr. Wemmick says, I have had my legs under the desk all day and shall be glad to stretch them. Now I'll tell you what I've got for supper, Mr. Pip. I have got a stewed steak, which is of home preparation, and a cold roast fowl, which is from the cook's shop. I think it's tender because the master of the shop was a juryman in some cases of ours the other day, and we let him down easy. I reminded him of it when I bought the fowl, and I said, pick us out a good one, old Briton, because if we had chosen to keep you in the box another day or two, we could have done it. He said to that, let me make you a present of the best fowl in the shop. I let him, of course. As far as it goes, it's property and portable. You don't object to an aged parent, I hope? I really thought he was still speaking of the fowl until he added, because I have got an aged parent at my place. I said then what politeness required. So you haven't dined with Mr. Jaggers yet? He pursued as we walked along. Not yet. He told me this afternoon when he heard you were coming. I expect you'll have an invitation tomorrow. And so they keep walking, and then they arrive by his house. It appeared to be a collection of black lanes, ditches, and little gardens, and to present the aspect of a rather dull retirement. Wemmick's house was a little wooden cottage in the midst of plots of garden, and the top of it was cut out and painted like a battery mounted with guns. My own doing, said Wemmick. Looks pretty, don't it? I highly commended it. I think it was the smallest house I ever saw, with the queerest Gothic windows, by far the greater part of them sham, and a Gothic door, almost too small to get in at. That's a real flagstaff, you see, said Wemmick. And on Sundays, I run up a real flag. Then look here, after I have crossed this bridge, I hoist it up so, and cut off the communication. The bridge was a plank, and it crossed a chasm about 4 feet wide and 2 deep. But it was very pleasant to see the pride with which he hoisted it up, and made it fast, smiling as he did so, with a relish, and not merely mechanically. At 9 o'clock every night Greenwich time, the gun fires. There he is, you see, and when you hear him go, I think you'll say, he's a stinger. And this chapter is just incredibly full of warmth, and then you meet his father, and just the very sweet relationship that they have, and it's really nice in a sea of darkness to kind of have these beacons of light in the midst of that. And I really love this chapter for it. The next one that is a very, very sad one is from Romola. And it is from the chapter Drifting Away. And this is at the end when Romola's father has passed away. She's been completely, utterly betrayed by Tito and just feels there's nothing left in life that she wants to live for. And so the one paragraph that I have here from the last section of Drifting Away says, had she found anything like the dream of her girlhood? No. Memories hung upon her like the weight of broken wings that could never be lifted. Memories of human sympathy, which even in its pains leaves a thirst that the great mother has no milk to still. Romola felt orphaned in those wide spaces of sea and sky. She read no message of love for her in that far-off symbolic writing of the heavens, and with a great sob she wished that she might be gliding into death. She drew the cowl over her head and covered her face, choosing darkness rather than the light of the stars, which seemed to her like the hard light of eyes that looked at her without seeing her. Presently she felt that she was in the grave, but not resting there. She was touching the hands of the beloved dead beside her and trying to wake them. It is when she is at the lowest point. It is definitely the lowest point of the book. And I just remember sitting there and weeping for Romola because she'd been through so much, and you feel so deeply for her. And George Eliot is just wonderful at building up these very flesh and blood characters and making you want their hopes and dreams to come true almost as much as those you know in real life do. Then, on a much less sad note, is a chapter right at the very end of The Wouldbegoods by E. Nesbit. This is the sequel to The Story of the Treasure Seekers. It is a extremely charming children's book, and I love this kind of tricolor scheme that is on this cover. I find it very charming. And there are lots of kind of conveniences that happen in E. Nesbit's plots, and I don't mind them in The Story of the Treasure Seekers or The Wouldbegoods. And I still want to read the new Treasure Seekers, but it is I think a 1903 publication date, so I've had less wind in my sails to get to that one. But anyhow, what I love is that there is a pretty woman that they have known throughout the majority of the book, and they know that Albert is one of their friends, and Albert's uncle, something happened to her. They don't know what it is, or something happened that Albert's uncle did not get married, and then eventually ends up, it's such a coincidence that Albert's uncle, he got separated from this woman who they're calling Albert's uncle's grandmother, because they're so just out of the loop with how what the actual age of different adults that they know are. And it's such a charming chapter, and it's really sweet. I saw it coming from a mile away that, it was going to be Albert's long lost love, but I didn't mind because E. Nesbit writes it in such a charming manner. So that definitely was a chapter I wanted to include on here. And then the chapter Moving Onward from the novel Deerbrook. Deerbrook is another one that has a fair amount of heartbreaking things that happen in it. And in this one, it's so funny. Speaking of cancel culture, so there's some cancel culture in Deerbrook. Where kind of the voting decision of the doctor, who's one of the main characters and is married to Hester, the sister, and it's made public what choice he made to vote. And so he is considered radical, and he is shamed out of the community, and no one is giving him their business. They're all traveling farther to a different doctor. And just the personal growth that they all show. So I'll just read a little bit of this opening part of the chapter, Moving Onward. The world rolls on. Let what may be happening to the individuals who occupy it. The sun rises and sets. Seed time and harvest come and go. Generations arise and pass away. Law and authority hold on their course, while hundreds of millions of human hearts have stirring within them struggles and emotions eternally new, an experience so diversified as that no 2 days appear alike to anyone. And to no two does any one day appear the same. There is something so striking in this perpetual contrast between the external uniformity and internal variety of the procedure of existence, that it is no wonder that multitudes have formed a conception of fate, of a mighty unchanging power, blind to the differences of spirits, and deaf to the appeals of human delight and misery, a huge insensible force, beneath which all that is spiritual is sooner or later wounded, and is ever liable to be crushed. This conception of fate is grand, is natural and fully warranted to minds too lofty to be satisfied with the details of human life, but which have not risen to the far higher conception of a providence to whom this uniformity and variety are but means to a higher end than they apparently involve. There is infinite blessing in having reached the nobler conception. The feeling of helplessness is relieved, the craving for sympathy from the ruling power is satisfied. There is a hold for veneration, there is room for hope, there is, above all, the stimulus and support of an end perceived or anticipated, a purpose which steeps in sanctity all human experience. For those that love domestic realism and Victorian literature, I highly recommend Deerbrook. And the chapter goes on, and just showing Hester and Margaret and the doctor and their servant, whose name is escaping me right now, all persevering in the midst of these trials. I'm always going to love a good perseverance plot line, and it's a beautifully done chapter and just such a beautiful and moving book. And now for something completely different, Lady Audley's Secret. So this is full of secrets and twists and turns and things you didn't see coming. It's extremely plot heavy, but there's also some fabulous characterization in here, like only Mary Elizabeth Braddon can do. And this chapter is The Red Light in the Sky. This chapter blew my mind. I already knew that Lady Audley was going to, she was going to go to great lengths to do what she wanted to do. But the fact that she set an inn on fire, I mean, that is some next level stuff. That is some next level crazy. And I had no idea she was going to go to those lengths. So yeah, that chapter was very surprising. I could not turn the pages quickly enough the first time that I read this. And then the next one, which is very humorous, and it is called The Great Panic. Yeah, The Panic. I'll see if I have any pictures in here. So basically, there is a series of, I think it's 1 or 2 small crimes that happen in the small community of Cranford. And they're being really blurry for you if I put them too close. But what is so funny is all of the spinsters in the town, which I get it. I would be very scared if I was an older woman and all of a sudden there's this crime wave in your small community. But the level of panic with which they have it's just done to such a comical level. And including one lady she's so worried someone's going to come steal her silver, and she sleeps with the silver in her outfit. And what I love is that what is her name? Oh, Imelda Staunton, who plays Miss Pole in the miniseries. She does that character so well, and it's written in such a funny, comical way. I would have to read the entire chapter to do it justice, but yes, The Panic from Cranford is so funny. And then the next favorite chapter is from the Pickwick Papers, and what did I have it written? An awkward situation. So that's the section of the chapter. The chapter itself has a very long name. So firstly, here's the picture, just to give you an idea of the awkward situation. Basically, someone accidentally, a woman accidentally ends up in this man's hotel room. And so she's sitting there getting ready, doing her ablutions before bedtime. Mr. Pickwick, it is quite unnecessary to say, was one of the most modest and delicate-minded of mortals. The very idea of exhibiting his nightcap to a lady overpowered him. But he had tied those confounded strings in a knot, and do what he would, he couldn't get it off. The disclosure must be made. There was only one other way of doing it. He shrunk behind the curtains and called out very loudly, "Hum!" That the lady started at this unexpected sound was evident by her falling up against the rushlight shade. That she persuaded herself it must have been the effect of imagination was equally clear, for when Mr. Pickwick, under the impression that she had fainted away stone dead from fright, ventured to peep out again, she was gazing pensively on the fire as before. Most extraordinary female this, thought Mr. Pickwick, popping in again. Ahem! These last sounds, so like those in which, as legends inform us, the ferocious giant Blunderbore was in the habit of expressing his opinion that it was time to lay the cloth, were too distinctly audible to be again mistaken for the workings of fancy. Gracious heaven, said the middle-aged lady. What's that? It's only a gentleman, ma'am, said Mr. Pickwick from behind the curtains. A gentleman, said the lady with a terrific scream. It's all over, thought Mr. Pickwick. A strange man, shrieked the lady. Another instant and the house would be alarmed. Ma'am, said Mr. Pickwick, thrusting out his head in the extremity of his desperation. Ma'am! Wretch, what do you want here? Nothing, ma'am, nothing whatever, ma'am, said Mr. Pickwick earnestly. Nothing, said the lady, looking up. Nothing, ma'am, upon my honor, said Mr. Pickwick, nodding his head so energetically that the tassel of his nightcap danced again. I am almost ready to sink, ma'am, beneath the confusion of addressing the lady in my nightcap, but I can't get it off, ma'am. It is evident to me, ma'am, that now I have mistaken this bedroom for my own. I have not been here 5 minutes, ma'am, when you suddenly entered it. If this improbable story be really true, sir, said the lady, sobbing violently, you will leave it instantly. I will, ma'am. With the greatest pleasure, replied Mr. Pickwick. Instantly, sir. Certainly, ma'am, interposed Mr. Pickwick. Certainly, ma'am. I'm very sorry, ma'am, to have been the innocent occasion of this alarm and emotion. Deeply sorry, ma'am. And then he just goes on to apologize and apologize as he continues to evacuate from the room, and it is hysterical. And then two left. So the first is Guy and Amy's Honeymoon from the Heir of Redclyffe. The Heir of Redclyffe is another one, like many Victorian novels, they're very dramatic, that has a fair amount of sad things that happen in them and a lot of up and down and unsure of kind of everyone's relationships and just finding your footing in the story. And when Guy and Amabel, or Amy as she's called for short, go on their honeymoon, it is this really sweet time where they get to be together, just the two of them, and they are traveling around in Italy and Switzerland and reveling in nature and reveling in this new sweet relationship that they have. And it's so sweetly done, as only Charlotte Mary Young can do it, and I love it so much. And then the last chapter that I wanted to talk about is the chapter in which you meet the Meyrick family in Daniel Deronda. And the Meyrick family are just this real ray of sunshine, breath of fresh air kind of family. The mother is a widower, and she has 3 daughters and 1 son, Hans, who is good friends with Daniel. And so they take in Mira. And I just love the descriptions of the household. Mother and daughters were all united by a triple bond: family love, admiration for the finest work, the best action, and habitual industry. Hans's desire to spend some of his money in making their lives more luxurious had been resisted by all of them, and both they and he had been thus saved from regrets at the threatened triumph of his yearning for art over the attractions of secured income, a triumph that would by and by oblige him to give up his fellowship. They could all afford to laugh at his Gavarni caricatures, and to hold him blameless in following a natural bent in which their unselfishness and independence had left without obstacle. It was enough for them to go on their old way, only having a grand treat of opera going when Hans came home on a visit. And then it says that Mrs. Meyrick had just finished reading aloud a book, and Mab, who had let her work fall on the ground while she stretched her head forward and fixed her eyes on the reader, exclaimed, "I think that this is the finest story in the world." "Of course, Mab," said Amy. "It is the last you have heard. Everything that pleases you is the best in its turn." "It is hardly to be called a story," said Kate. "It is a bit of a history, brought near us with a strong telescope. We can see the soldiers' faces. No, it is more than that. We can hear everything. We can almost hear their hearts beat." "I don't care what you call it," said Mab, flirting away with her thimble. "I call it a chapter in Revelations. It makes me want to do something good, something grand. It makes me sorry for everybody. It makes me like Schiller. I want to take the world in my arms and kiss it. I must kiss you instead, little mother." She threw her arms round her mother's neck. "Whenever you are in that mood, Mab, down goes your work," said Amy. "It would be doing something good to finish your cushions without soiling it." Oh, groaned Mab, as she stooped to pick up her work and thimble. "I wish I had 3 wounded conscripts to take care of." "You would spill their beef tea while you were talking," said Mab. Said Amy. "Poor Mab, don't be hard on her," said the mother. "Give me the embroidery now, child. You go on with your enthusiasm, and I will go on with the pink and white poppy." And that's just a little glimpse into the Meyrick household, and I just love the affection that George Eliot has for her characters, and it really comes through for these side characters that you don't spend a whole ton of time with, but she makes it just every moment matters and is thought about so strategically with George Eliot's writing. So those are that's the second half of my favorite chapters from Victorian literature. I know there are many, many more out there that I could do, but some books, such as North and South and Wives and Daughters, the stories feel very much as a whole to me, and so it's hard for me to think of individual chapters within them. But I think if I went through and, picked through them, I could find more. So maybe next October I'll have 20 more chapters to talk about. But in the meantime, I thought these were a really good place to start. And please let me know some of your favorite chapters from Victorian literature. And I will be back with another video soon. Bye.